Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Back at the coffee shop.
Dude, what's up, man? I have a cappuccino in my throat.
I know. You're like dying over there. I'm like,
gosh.
I want to say, hey,
I'm actually not sick.
If anyone's listening to the show in 5 months from now, could you please call 911 because he's like choking over here.
Oh my gosh. The espresso got caught halfway down. Apologize.
It's a liquid, dude.
Yeah, I know. Went down the wrong pipe, I guess. I don't know.
All right. Well, as long as you're back, because
or I have COVID or something.
No, don't go there.
Yep.
Because it can't just be the Mike show. It's the Glenn and
man.
Mike
So
show.
what's up, brother? How are you?
Hey,
Good
hanging tough. I know. It's good to be back in the coffee shop. We got a good topic today. I'm
got
pretty
the corner
stoked about
table
that.
again?
Every day. Every
love
day.
it, man.
You know why? Because the important people sit in the corner table.
Yeah.
Well, wait, excuse me.
It's
They
time
just
to
asked
move.
us to move.
I
Yeah,
know,
right.
It's time to move. You're right. So what are we talking about today?
Yeah, we're. I think we're going to bring it back to basics. First steps of recovery. What are the first steps?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So we recently did an episode on Sober Curious, and that was really
good.
cool. Hashtag Sober Curious, and there's a lot of people out there, just trying to say, hey man, where am I at? Where am I at with my drinking? Should I cut down? Should I cut out? We had dry January, dry February, dry June, right? So people are trying to figure it out. So, out of there, right, we've connected with a lot of people out in our social media world.
Mm-hmm.
And some questions just about, how do I get started, right? How do I take the first step? What do I do, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm tired of drinking. I'm tired of the hangovers. I'm tired of getting in trouble. I'm tired of, consequences. What do I do?
Mm-hmm. So what do you do?
So let's talk about taking the first step. So first of all, when I started thinking about this and getting my head around it, I'm reminded of the saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step,
mm-hmm.
or it begins with a single step. And I really think that that's, as I look back on my journey, and I know, we've talked about this a lot, that I never realized that recovering was a journey,
mm-hmm.
right? In fact, I think back to the first time I was in rehab in 2003, and I'm tapping my watch saying, hey, let's get these 12 steps done. I have to get back to work.
Giddy up. Let's go.
Let's get them done. And my temporary sponsor at the time said, you know what, man, that's not how this works. This is a lifelong journey. And man, was he right. And that was just like one step. And then I made a lot of steps and a lot of stutter steps,
mm-hmm.
as folks know my story. But then in September 2014 is when I really surrendered, and that was my true first step,
mm-hmm. getting
outside of me. How about you?
Well, it's interesting because I got to the coffee shop a little bit earlier knowing this topic. I said, what are the first steps? Well, I'm an overachiever. I came up with 9 of them. But
Dude, of course you did.
9 first steps,
awesome.
right?
That's awesome.
But number 1 was surrender, and the little note I jotted down to myself is, you're going to need to sooner or later. It's either going to be today or it's got to be in the future, because if you don't surrender, that's really the linchpin. So, yeah, for me, the first steps happened to me because I had just come to the decision that my life was unmanageable, and alcohol was ruining me, and so, my first step was to say help. That was my first step. But then I think today, as I prepared for this in the parking lot, I think it's about what logically do you do,
Well, I know a lot of folks, and you and I both work with a lot of folks, right? I mean, we talk to a lot of people, especially at a newcomers meeting, and folks, and I work with one guy specifically. He wants like his entire life mapped out, mm-hmm. right? Prior to his making that commitment, prior to him surrendering. And I said, dude, it's not how this works, man. You have to commit, and the next quote, because I do have a couple quotes here, is, you don't need to see the whole staircase. Mm-hmm. You're not going to see the whole staircase. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have it all figured out before you make that first step. just have the faith, to make that first step.
Mm-hmm. No, that's
and I totally agree. I think the first step is surrender. Say, look, I can't do this. I need help.
It is. And I think consistent with that is, to your point, you need to get yourself out of the way, right? Because got myself into a whole lot of trouble. I love how you say this, and you've said it before. You can't fix the same problem with the same brain that got you there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think that an important first step is stop beating yourself up. Stop worrying about and recounting all the failures, and just look forward to some successes, because they're in you if you just follow a program.
No, I love it. So do you really have 9 of them?
I do.
I do.
Gosh.
You have 9 first steps.
9 first steps.
Man, let's just whiteboard it, right?
All right, right. Call your doctor. That's a big first step for me.
That's a really good first step.
Call your doctor, man. And what I was thinking was, they're the professionals, and you're surely not the first alcoholic that they've ever run into, right? So they've got some resources, they've got some programs, and if you don't like your doctor, guess what? I Googled this. There are 1.4 million, 1.1442, 454 GPs out there. Go get a new one.
Plenty of resources.
Plenty of resources. And don't get a pill thrower.
And hey, one thing, don't go to a pill thrower, but that's a whole nother episode. But one thing that we can, in addition, or another option to your doctor, I think the doctor's a great one. And we have all our disclosures at the end of the
right, because we're not
episode, right? We are not doctors. But we've also talked to a guy, Matt Goff, with Care Treatment Centers, and he does a lot of assessments, right? Where you can call him, you can call another treatment center, and get an assessment over the phone or in person, right? Where they can sit there and, the doctor will look at it from a medical perspective, but you might land up with some pills in your pocket, right? But going for an assessment such as Matt does at Care Treatment in Geneva, Illinois, he'll spend some time looking at, and I know we have an episode on it, but he'll look at like the psychological part of it, the physical part of it, right? The behavioral part of it, right? And really, do a full assessment and say, hey, where are we really at? And what are the true next best first steps?
Right. No, I couldn't agree with you more.
And some might be detox. He has said, I've talked to him because, hey, I've taken people right from assessments right into detox because they're shaking and they're having a medical issue.
Right. I wish we had, we got to get better at having like our library of episodes, because we did do that episode and we talked about inpatient, outpatient.
I know.
We should be able to reference like episode,
you don't have
22
memorized?
or something like that.
No, I think it's 42, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, right. So, yeah,
you're right.
I think you're right. Get professional treatment if you can, and you can. I mean, Google it. There's a million resources out there. What you got? Because I got more.
Well, I know. I definitely want to hear more.
All right. Tell those that you love.
I only have 1 first step. You have 9 first steps, so let's go.
I'm an overachiever. I told you.
Yes, you are.
Tell somebody that you love what you're going through. Tell somebody that you love. Let the cat out of the bag. It's not going to come as any great surprise to them.
See, that is so true. It's so many times where we think like it's all in our head and we have everybody fooled.
Right.
And it's just the opposite. They're PhDs and we're the fools sitting there. I shouldn't call ourselves fools, but we're the ones thinking we have everybody goofed.
Yeah, right.
Like nobody's going to know until I tell them. Meanwhile, we spent the last 3 months in bed, right, with some quote unquote flu.
Sure. But doesn't that happen post sobriety as well, Glenn? I mean, you talk about reading the label. If I'm a little off, and trust me, I'm a little off. But when I'm really a little off, you'll call me out on it.
Absolutely,
right? I mean, you'll say, "All right, what's up, dude? Something's not right."
Yeah, but we've accepted that, right? Because we're in the pool right now, and we know that that's how we work with each other, and that's acceptable, right? When you're just starting out, taking that first step, there's a lot in the pool that you have to learn. Right. But no, I like that. Bring somebody else into the conversation with your situation. You said help.
Yep.
And your babe was right there, and she goes, "You serious? Let's go."
Right. Yep, that's a beautiful thing.
And it was minutes, and you were in that car strapped down.
Yeah, and if you
going
don't,
west.
I mean, I'm not specifically talking about a spouse. It could be a sister, a brother, a mom, a dad, a cousin, a
friend,
or a friend. Just let them know, because it brings support and accountability, to the table, and those are really two big attributes.
Love it.
Accept recovery direction. Maybe that's my second biggest first step is accept recovery, because I didn't know how to become sober, and I don't know how to become a better person, but by continuing to hang with people who are better people than me and are sober, I get to learn from them. But I have to do what they do, or I have to do what they suggest. So you've got to accept that recovery direction from people, and that's hard sometimes. It was hard for me.
I was just going to ask you that. How hard was it for you?
Initially, I was a sponge, do anything. But then once I got out into the real world and life started happening in front of me, I went back to my old tendency saying, I can do this. But when you bring it to accountability partner, if you bring it to your group, if you bring it to an individual or a loved one, and they can help you, but then you got to do what they say, right? That's a toxic relationship. You ought to stay away from it. Okay, well, then now I got two choices. Go back to the toxic relationship or stay away from it.
Yeah, and that goes back to your point of surrender. That goes back, for me, in my story, September of 2014, when I surrendered, my surrender looked like I sat on my counselor's floor on a Friday afternoon after 6 hospitals in 1 week and an 8-day detox. I couldn't even sit in the chair. I was so bad. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him. I said, I will do anything you tell me to do.
Right.
And I meant it. And I'm telling you, I mean it to this day. If somebody within my circle who I respect, who works the program and can read my label, said, hey, you need to do this, I would do it, because there are times I do it.
But what about your ego?
You know what? My ego got me into my alcoholism. My ego got me struggling instead of surrendering.
I wish everyone could. I wish we were doing this in video, because you almost. I saw your lips pursed with the F. You almost threw the F-bomb out there,
dude.
Right? I mean, your back went up. You said no, because
so
that's just how serious you are about it.
No, I mean that is a very key point. It doesn't. I had to get outside of my own head, because I ran my AA program for years, and all that led me to was another detox program. Mm-hmm. It's when I sat there and I said, I will do whatever you tell me to do, and I really did it.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, the first couple nights, hey, we're going to movie night. All right, hey man, yeah, that's cool. Let's do it. Mm-hmm. I'm all in for movie night. Next day we're going for a walk. Okay, you're pushing it, right? and then it's like, hey, let's do some work, Glenn, because you're not going to see your daughters the rest of your life. You fucked it up too bad.
Right.
So let's sit down. I mean, that's when I was like, no. Yeah. And he's like, hey man, I thought you surrendered.
Right.
Let's sit down and do this. And I'm like, oh crap, I did surrender. That's right. Ugh.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. It's not easy.
Well, it's not easy staying on
the best way.
It's not easy staying on the surrender course, I guess is my point. But I want to learn how to be a better person and deal with situations in my life where they're not chewing me up. Why? Because I don't want to go back down that path of things chewing me up, turning out negatively, and then I'll inevitably turn back to drink, and I won't allow that to happen.
But I also want to weigh in, and this is hard. I mean, it's easy for me to say this, but it's hard for a newcomer who's trying to take the first step of who to surrender to, right? Because if you go to some doctors, I surrendered to many a doc, and I got plenty of pills, right? And that wasn't, looking back, for me, that was the wrong move. There's people in the program. I mean, there's one guy I knew, he had 3 months of sobriety, and he's trying to solicit all these sponsees. The guy hadn't worked the steps himself, but he wanted the ego and drive the ego and get all these people on his bandwagon. So I'm probably getting technical here, right? But I think it's important who you bring in your car with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I'm not sure if I have any advice beyond that, but.
Well, look, if I'm looking to fix my golf game, I'm not going to go to a hack golfer. I'm going to try and find somebody who's got game, who can analyze my stroke and help me out. I mean, it's just logical to me.
Yeah, no, that's a key point to point out, though.
Right. And my last one. See, we zipped through my 9. Really.
Wow, that was fast.
Well, they kind of
You
blended.
skipped over some.
No, they kind of blended into everything that you said. And the last one is to join a support group. And again, it might sound like it's redundant, but I'll tell you, this is coming from a guy who lived alone, not physically, but mentally and spiritually lived alone. I was a loner. I just didn't want anybody else involved in my life. And now for me, following the direction, and people say, have that support group, it was hard for me to do, really hard for me to do, because I didn't want more friends. But what I found out is my associates now are not friends. They're partners in sobriety.
Partners on the path.
Yeah,
right?
There you go. Right, love that.
All right, so one thing, and I have another quote here.
Okay.
First of all, I love your list of 9. It sounded like 6, but that's okay.
It is upside down.
There you go. No,
you're across
right.
the table from me.
Darn it, that's right.
That's right.
So here's another quote, a Glenn quote. And you've heard me say this before, but I mean, in regards to taking the first step in recovery, you'll never learn how to swim if you don't jump in the pool.
Yeah.
Right. And when you mentioned support group, there's one that I know of that I happen to have attended and still attend called AA. And for me, and I know for you too, it has been the best support group that anybody could ever find.
Yep, absolutely.
So, jump in. Don't sit on the sidelines. I just love the people that sit on the bleachers, and yell at the people in the pool or on the court, and say, "Oh, AA's not for me," and they go to 2 meetings and then they judge AA, right? No, man, I think you got to jump in the pool. You got to do 90 meetings in 90 days. You got to put your video on. You got to go in person. You got to shake people's hands. You got to get involved. You got to do, sober bingo, sober
Stop it.
Uno,
Stop
sober
it.
bowling.
Not doing it.
I'm telling you, man, it makes a difference.
All right, well, we got a minute or 2 left here. Let's talk about the stigma of I go to AA, right? So, I was going to mention, as you were talking, if AA is not for you, there's NA, Narcotics Anonymous, there's SOS, SMART, Women for Sobriety, et cetera, et cetera. And we've covered them here on the coffees. But the stigma, I never aspired to be part of an AA community or fellowship or go to AA meetings, right? But it's changed. It saved my life, and it's changing my life. You know what I mean? But I just want to bring it up. I mean, you knew about AA before you came into the rooms, and didn't you have that feeling that I don't want to be part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I've shared some stories about some early people I knew who were in AA, and I thought they were whack jobs.
Right. People listening to us are
maybe
probably,
I was the whack job.
people are listening to us thinking these are right.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, you know what we have learned, regardless of where it is, and we love AA, but regardless of where it is, we don't recover alone.
No, right.
We just don't.
And if you try, I just haven't seen anybody succeed doing it alone.
Right. So here's just a couple things I jotted down. Then we'll give up our table for somebody else. One is when first step for me is I identify that, hey, I have a problem. Something's not right here, and I knew that early on, right? And then I've realized, hey, I've tried to fix that problem on my own, and I can't, and the problem just gets worse. And then, like you said, reach out for help. Just like you have said and did. And then use the word surrender. Get out. I had to get outside of my head. Get outside of my head, saying, "Look, man, I just need to raise my hand. I need to surrender. I need some help. Give me some direction, right? Because, like you said, it's hard to fix the problem with the same brain that created it. So, hey, there's a lot of people out there, Mikey, that are sober curious, that are looking to take that first step.
Take it.
Yeah, absolutely take it. If you want to raise your hand to us, it's on an anonymous basis. It's podcast. Our email is podcast@Sober.Coffee. You can reach us on Instagram, social media, Sober.Coffee Podcast. And here, if you don't want to reach out to us, here's a national alcohol addiction hotline. The phone number is 800-662-5555. HELP, HELP, which is also 800-662-4357. And we also have the numbers.
It's on the resource room. Yeah. Definitely go to our website. Check out the resource room. There's lots of great links there for.
Just don't have to suffer alone anymore.
No, you don't.
No way, man.
No.
There is a solution.
Love you, man.
Love you too, brother.
All right. Have a great one.
All right.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.